of the war film reviews thing that I'll be doing from now on and off, whatever. So there's something that has always kind of like made me happy when it comes to a film, and that is if you have a lot of nostalgia for it. Now, a lot of times nostalgia can kind of blind somebody. It has me. I am not exempt from this at all. The green slime, for example, or the X from outer space. Nostalgia can sometimes blind people and give it a better review than what it actually is, or look at a film as being better than what it is. So essentially, it kind of like curbs your eyes. It curbs your viewing experience of a film. But every once in a while, you see one of those old movies that you have a lot of nostalgia for growing up, and you watch it now. You watch it with a brand new light. You watch it for the first time in a long time, something like that. And you rediscover just how actually good that film is without the nostalgia. Exempt from nostalgia. You just discover how good the film is. And that is exactly what happened here with John Sturgis's The Eagle Has Landed, made 1976. I have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. I first watched this movie when I was in 6th grade with my father, and he loves this film. He adores this movie, and I can honestly see why. But even when I was a kid, I really liked it. I liked the intrigue of, a bunch of Nazis going to try to kill Churchill. It was kind of like the total opposite of a film like Where Eagles Dare, where it's the Allies going in to take care of something, or Operation Crossbow. This was the Nazis trying to take care of something, so that always kind of captivated me. But it was such great to rewatch it on the new Shout Factory Blu-ray, which is what I bought. And I recommend getting that Blu-ray full-heartedly. That is an amazing Blu-ray. Shout Factory is my second favorite DVD producing company out there. I don't think they've really released a DVD that I don't like. They make good shit. But it shocked me at how good of a movie Eagle Has Landed was. Even though I knew what was coming, I was still on the edge of my seat. This is a good thriller. I mean, that's what John Sturges was known for, was making kind of thrillers and westerns. But this is an excellent thriller, through and through. One of the things that really kind of sells it as a thriller is how succeedingly well it captivates you, and how believable they make it actually look, and so on and so forth. Now, this was written by Tom Mankiewicz. Those who don't know who Tom Mankiewicz is, he was mainly known as a thriller espionage kind of screenwriter, and he's most known actually for writing a lot of the early James Bond movies, specifically the ones with Roger Moore. He wrote a lot of those, but he actually also wrote the first 2 Superman movies, even though he didn't get credit on Superman 2, but he worked on those. And he based this screenplay off of a book written by Jack Higgins called The Eagle Has Landed, and it was a huge bestseller when it was released. It was a huge bestseller. And I have not read the book. I cannot attest to how accurate it is to the book or how inaccurate it is to the book. Either way, I find this movie extremely enjoyable. And in an interview, Tom Mankiewicz said, he said that it's not whether or not you are going to lose something, but what you're going to lose, which that quote kind of stuck with me throughout the film, because he had a hard time writing and rewriting the script, because the book is so dense.
It's so dense. Every single image has so many things going on.
The book has literally so much information in it and so much going on that he said if he wrote like verbatim of the book into a screenplay, the movie would have been like 4.5 hours long. But some of the things that like he added, because you gotta kind of change things, is he made the Germans a little more sympathetic. Higgins was very much so, these are Nazis. Mankiewicz cut that out. Mankiewicz made these people more Germans than Nazis. For example, Mankiewicz wrote this fantastic scene where Steiner saves this Jewish girl. It doesn't work out in the end, but he saved this Jewish girl because he doesn't agree with what the Nazis are doing. And that's what ultimately leads Steiner into getting this job. He added that. What happened in the book was that kind of character was scattered throughout the entire work. It wasn't just one scene. And to condense Steiner's sort of philosophy and his crew's philosophy into one scene, Mankiewicz wrote the scene with the Jewish girl, which is a very good scene. And, that's an example of, I think, somebody taking the essence of the book, changing it, but still capturing the emotions and feelings of the actual story itself. And as a result, Mankiewicz considered this his best work, and quite frankly, I agree. I've seen his James Bond movies, I've seen the 2 Superman movies. This is by far his strongest work, because this script is extremely tight, and everything in the end ties together, which are 2 very important things when it comes to me. Specifically, the everything comes together, because I've seen a couple movies where the script isn't necessarily tight, but everything sort of comes around and comes together in the end, and I still consider it a very good screenplay. So in comes John Sturges. This is where the fun begins. John Sturges did not want to make any more movies. Period. He wanted to retire. He was getting to be an old man, a very cranky and angry old man, for that matter. And he was mainly known, as I said earlier, for his westerns and thrillers. For example, he directed The Great Escape. One movie that I really like from him is Ice Station Zebra with Rock Hudson, and probably his most famous western is The Magnificent Seven. Those are 3 movies that he directed that are very famous. Because he didn't want to make any movies, he kind of put no effort into the making of this film. He just did it for a paycheck so that he could retire and buy a mansion. That's literally it. And this movie was lucky to be surrounded by good people. By good people who knew what they were doing, specifically in the actors as well. Donald Sutherland, Michael Caine, Robert Duvall. He was lucky that he had a great ensemble cast, because Sturges hardly directed them at all. He just basically sat back and said action. That was pretty much all he did. His second unit director and his director of photography actually were like the 2 that kind of really directed this movie and tried to make something coherent out of it, because John Sturges just did not care. In fact, it was always the actors and the DP and the crew who begged Sturges to do a take 3. Sturges usually would just, in this movie, would just go take 1 and just go, because he wanted to get it done. He didn't really care about the movie at all. He didn't care about if it was good or bad. He didn't care anything. He just wanted to leave. So he was lucky to be surrounded by a great dedicated crew, specifically Michael Caine. Michael Caine really, really, really wanted to be in this movie, but we'll get into that a little later. And Mankiewicz said this in an interview, that Sturges had basically given up on his career, given up on the movie. To kind of emphasize just how much Sturges did not care, Sturges literally, as soon as he yelled, "Cut, that's a wrap," walked off set and drove off. He left post-production in the air, everything. He just literally left set and walked off. He did not care about the editing of the movie, he did not care about the music, so he just left. He just left, period, and left everything high and dry. And thankfully, this movie was really saved in editing, which this was beautifully thrown together by Anvi Coates, who I know her mainly because she edited David Lynch's The Elephant Man. She's a really good editor. This was kind of like a Star Wars Episode 4. This is why I don't think George Lucas is good at what he does at all, because the first cut that he made of the original Star Wars was awful. It was terrible. Everybody hated it. Steve Spielberg hated it. Everybody hated it. But what George Lucas was good at doing was getting people around himself that knew what they were doing. Hence why Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were so good. And so the original Star Wars was saved completely by the editing of the movie. Completely. I don't care what people say. The editing of that movie is what saved it. And that's what happened here. Coates saved this movie from being a complete and total disaster in the editing room, because this movie is extremely well put together and extremely well structured, and it's a testament. I can't really say that this is John Sturges' movie. This is Tom Mankiewicz's movie, if you really look at it, because Tom Mankiewicz wrote the script, Coates edited the damn thing, Lalo Schifrin did the amazing music score for this. It was like everybody else but the director made this movie good. So this is kind of a weird case of the artist actually not doing, the actual artist, the director actually not doing their job, and that everybody else was doing the job for him. But what really makes this movie work, alright, what really makes this movie work is the plausibility of this universe. And that it mixes real-life characters such as Heinrich Himmler, played by Donald Pleasence, and a fictional character like Roddle, played by Robert Duvall. it kind of pulls the fall of the Roman Empire. Watch my little chat with that with my friend Patrick Galvin if you want to know more about that. But basically, it mixes real life events with fictitious characters and creates a story. Everything with this movie is beautifully structured because everything builds off of each other. This is a very plot heavy movie. The characters aren't necessarily three-dimensional, but the plot is extremely good and the plot is extremely riveting because everything is building off of each other. One of my favorite films of all time is The Andromeda Strain, where the characters definitely take a back seat in that film in service of the talkie-techie plot, and I love those kind of stories. Scenes cut away for a reason. An example is, it would go from England to where Caine is, and suddenly it would cut back to France with Robert Duvall. And it would cut away for a reason. There wasn't just scenes just kind of thrown together, kind of like the Battle of Britain, where things just kind of cut away just for the sake of cutting away, and there wasn't really any cohesive gesture to how the film was actually structured. This movie has a very strict structure, and it works very, very well. The thing that also kind of turns people off about this movie nowadays is that this is a German film with no subtitles. And what I mean by that is that every character in this movie speaks English. There is no German in the film. But that doesn't really bug me at all. In fact, movies that have a lot of these kind of like subtitle this is why films such as like Gunhead bug the living crap out of me, because it switches from English to Chinese to Japanese like crazy, and that always bugged the living crap out of me. A film like The Longest Day, scenes were very split. It would go from German to French to English, something along those lines. And it was very concise who and what was speaking. This film would bounce around too much if they actually stuck the original language. Because it would bounce from Polish to French, back to German, then to English. It would be all over the place. The subtitles would be all over the place, and I'd have a hard time following it. So the fact that everything is spoken in English actually doesn't bug me at all. In fact, movies that do that actually don't bug me that much at all. For example, Valkyrie, the one with Tom Cruise, I adore that movie for almost the same reasons as I adore this film. In that movie, every character speaks English. They don't speak German. And I think that's an extremely great film. But every shot has a purpose. That's another thing that's really good about this film, the cinematography, that every shot has a purpose. And this movie succeeds at doing what I think cameras need to do, and that is cameras need to feel like a character. You see what you are supposed to see, and that's it. A camera doesn't move unless it's supposed to move, because we're supposed to reveal something, so on and so forth. And this movie is just full of those kind of shots. And the cinematography in general in this film is unbelievably gorgeous, and that's because the director of photography knew what the hell he was doing, unlike Sturgis. And that also goes into the editing as well. The editor knew exactly when to cut, how many frames a shot needed to linger on a character, and so on and so forth. And a scene where this is a great example of that is the scene where the German paratroopers are discovered as being German. What happens is suddenly it goes from these kind of like long, wide shots to suddenly these tight close-ups and these quick cuts. Because it'll cut to Michael Caine's face, and how he doesn't really move his face at all, but if you look at him, he is like, oh shit. He's got that kind of emotion. And suddenly it goes to all these quick cuts. That's a great example of this. Now, basically, the plot of this film is basically after the rescue of Mussolini in 1943, Himmler orders a more daring kidnapping of Winston Churchill by a bunch of German paratroopers. And this is what the story is. And the kidnapping turns into assassination. And the story is literally about these paratroopers that land in a secluded area in Britain, where Winston Churchill was going to take a rest, and it's their journey in to try and assassinate him. So we have Robert Duvall character, which Robert Duvall's character is by far, I think overall Robert Duvall's character is my favorite character of the entire film. I mean, he's definitely the most kind of three-dimensional, and by three-dimensional I don't mean that by much. And so basically what happens is he's handed a joke by Anthony Quayle's character. Anthony Quayle is like the head admiral of the German fleet. And Anthony Quayle says, I want you to do a feasibility study on the actual kidnapping of Winston Churchill. And Robert Duvall was like, okay. So when Robert Duvall sort of is looking up what he's going to do and trying to see if it's actually feasible, he discovers something. He and his assistant discover that, oh my god, we could actually do this. And so, against Anthony Quayle's orders, he starts to actually write a genuine operation structure for this kidnapping of Churchill, and he calls it Operation Eagle. And which is why the film is called The Eagle Has Landed. And so he's basically the brain of the operation. And something else that I really want to bring up about Robert Duvall is that I love the design of his character. He looks very much like Colonel Stauffenberg, another parallel to Valkyrie. Colonel Stauffenberg was the man who was in charge of Operation Valkyrie, the guy who actually tried to kill Hitler and blew up the thing and almost took down the Third Reich single-handedly. But he failed. He looks kind of like that. And what I mean by that, he has an eye patch, he has a thick hand, and so on and so forth. And what I like about this sort of design of Robert Duvall is that you look at his character and you know he's a war vet. Already almost his entire backstory, which doesn't need to be explained because of this design, you already know it. You already know he's seen combat experience, you know that he's a man of the front. Which I always like. I always like kind of character designs like that. But my favorite scenes with Robert Duvall are the scenes where he interacts with Heinrich Himmler, which Donald Pleasance plays, I think, the best Himmler I have ever seen in a movie. He gets his mannerisms down, he captures the absolute insanity and connivingness of that evil, evil, evil man. And Donald Pleasance was always good at playing those kind of characters anyways. I mean, look at You Only Live Twice, the James Bond movie where he played Blofeld. Best Blofeld ever, by the way. But he does just an absolutely fantastic job. And what I mean by that is that, Robert Duvall looks utterly terrified in these scenes because he's talking to Himmler. And Himmler actually manages to call him out on it. And I really like that. Himmler's like, you don't need to be nervous. And then he's like, oh yeah, but you've killed so many people. And that kind of terrified essence that is the aura that is around Himmler and anyone of Hitler's high staff. And Robert Duvall knows that something's up, and that is, at any chance they get, Himmler is going to completely backstab him. And any chance you get, and that's something else I like about Robert Duvall's character, is Robert Duvall's character is smart enough to know that. The thing with this operation is that it was always planned to fail, because Hitler supposedly gives Himmler the okay to go through with this operation, but then whenever the chance happens and when things start falling apart, Himmler completely withdraws from it and actually orders Robert Duvall to be killed to distance himself from the failed operation even more, to keep himself in a positive light from Hitler. But I feel so sad for Robert Duvall because when the plan actually fails, he is killed because Himmler, as I just said, wanted to distance himself from the operation. And Robert Duvall says a line to his assistant right before he tells his assistant to leave, to escape, before, things start coming down, because Himmler would kill his assistant as well, or anyone really linked to the operation. Robert Duvall says, they measured me for my casket before this began. They measured me for my casket before this began. And I love that line, because I love this, and it goes into why Robert Duvall acted so scared with those scenes with Himmler, because he knew that this plan, though plausible, was very far-fetched, and that in the end he was probably going to get killed for this just because of political differences within the high command of the Third Reich. And that really establishes too why I like Roddle so much, Robert Duvall's character, and that is because he is not a Nazi. Again, I'm not sure if this was added in the movie and left out of the book, but he is not a Nazi. And there are several scenes where Robert Duvall talks about how the war is going to end badly for Germany, and that during the time that this movie takes place in mid-1943. And that's really emphasized in a scene where he finally gets Steiner on his side, Michael Caine's character, and you see he goes up to Steiner and he says he wants to do, this needs to happen for Germany. This is a desperate act and a desperate situation that this needs to happen for Germany. And the line he says is, it may not win the war, but it might put forward talks of a negotiated peace. I love that bit. I love that line. That's Robert Duvall's character in a nutshell, and explains his reasoning for wanting to go forward with Operation Eagle, because he wants, Churchill was one of the big three leaders in World War II. Though I don't think this operation would have, even if they succeeded at killing Winston Churchill, I don't think this operation would have brought a negotiated peace, because you still had Roosevelt and you still had Stalin. Both of them were completely nuts. And everyone was nuts in this war, but I don't think it would have brought about the negotiated peace. But what I like about this is that the movie brings that up. The movie brings that up and is like, this probably won't do anything, or this operation probably won't do anything other than murdering a bunch of paratroopers and assassinating a world leader, but it is worth a shot nonetheless. And I don't know why I like that so much. I really don't. I kind of like desperate situations in movies where even though the characters are set up to fail, and you still kind of root for them, it's kind of the underdog lover in me. I've always been a fan of underdog stories, or stories of like an underdog rising and overcoming. Not like Rocky movies, but this is definitely an underdog movie, and I really enjoy it. And then there's Donald Sutherland. Which Donald Sutherland is a very enjoyable character, but also brings about my biggest complaint with the movie. And that is, Donald Sutherland plays an IRA man who wants to bring down England. That's it. He doesn't like Germany, he doesn't like anything else, but all he wants is for Ireland to be completely independent from England. And I love the scene where he is called forward by Robert Duvall's character, and they're having a conversation. It's a great scene. Both Robert Duvall and Donald Sutherland do a great job of capturing the essence of they're trying to outsmart each other, but yet at the same time they have respect for each other, that kind of deal. And what happens is Robert Duvall says Germany will have to win if you want Ireland to be free. And then Donald Sutherland says this great line, he says, "Let's not start dreaming, Colonel." I love that because even he knows that the war is going to end badly for Germany, and then so does everything. Everybody other than the high command of Nazi Germany knows that the war is they're going to lose, that Germany is going to lose. And I love that kind of is an overarching kind of presence throughout the film, the desperate nature of the Germans at this point. Now, the fact that Donald Sutherland was playing an IRA character was actually it was a very risky part because of the current state of England and Ireland. During the time period that this movie was made, 1976, there was a lot of tension between the British and the Irish. There were a lot of assassinations going on, a lot of protests going on, there was a lot of riots taking place. It was very risky, and that was actually why Michael Caine actually turned down the role to play Donald Sutherland's character. Michael Caine was originally supposed to play the IRA man, but Michael Caine turned it down from fear because he was British. He had got married, he has a new kid, he was scared that something bad was going to happen. However, Donald Sutherland comes along and he embraces the role. He perfected his Irish accent, even though he was an American. He perfected it, and he has such a suave attitude and everything about him. And for example, that scene that I just talked about where him and Rod will meet for the first time and they're talking, he's this great, like, shit-eating grin on his face, and he's very charismatic without being over the top. He doesn't really have to say much, and he takes command of the room, and I really like that about him. I mean, he's very quick and witty to respond to somebody like that, and we'll get into a scene a little later. But every scene he's in, he just takes up the screen in a good way. He's not like Steve McQueen from another Sturgis movie in The Magnificent Seven, where Steve McQueen specifically was acting kind of over the top to take the limelight from Yul Brynner. No, this is done right, what Donald Sutherland does, and it's great. And what happens is, this is my biggest complaint with this movie. Shocker, shocker, this movie has a romance in it. I know. I don't hate romances in films. I don't. In fact, this romance, if I'm going to be quite frank with you, this romance isn't even that bad. Because both Donald Sutherland and the character Molly give unbelievably good, solid performances. Their performances themselves are good. Like, I believe them. For example, the character Molly, she shoots a guy named Arthur who discovers Donald Sutherland's plot, and then after she shoots him, great squib effect, but we'll get into that a little later, she then hides in the church of this town, and she's shaking, and she looks so genuinely horrified because she's an 18-year-old girl. Well, Donald Sutherland plays like a 27-year-old. And so those two fall in love. Again, they give absolutely great, astonishing performances, genuinely good humanistic performances. The problem is that this Operation Eagle, takes place over the course of, I believe they said, 3 days. But yet her and Molly and Sutherland fall in love. Now, I've always hated the love at first sight thing. I've always hated that, and that's actually one of the things I really like about Disney's Frozen, is that they turn that cliche on its head. But that's way too quick of a time for characters to admit that they love each other. Because it's not, if it was just Molly, I would buy it more because she's an 18-year-old girl. But no. What happens is that they both say they love each other, indirectly, but they both love each other in the way how they look and they act. And don't get me wrong, there is an attraction there. An example of that is when they first meet. Donald Sutherland is clearly flirting with her, and then she starts flirting back, and then Donald Sutherland calls her nothing but a tease, and then she kind of like gives him a wink and rides off to deliver, I believe it was milk. That's what she was delivering. She was delivering milk. Now, there is an attraction there, and I wouldn't mind that attraction there at all. I wouldn't. In fact, I'd like it. It's the fact that she says, I love you, and the fact that they fall so madly in love with each other so quickly, that bugs me. And it's way too quick of a time period to form a real love story, period. The problem with the film, in terms of how it's structured, is that this could not have been cut out. Unlike the Battle of Britain, where that romance could have been cut out and wouldn't change the overarching story one bit, this love story cannot be cut out for the story to work. Because Molly plays a very important role in the last act of the film. And again, I just want to emphasize that both her and Sutherland give absolutely amazing performances in these scenes. The way how they look at each other really screams that they are attracted to each other and that there is a connection going on between those two characters. But it's too quick of a time period for actual love to form. I would have changed it. Naturally, I would have changed it. This is like the only thing in the movie that I really would have changed. Instead of having Donald Sutherland drop just a couple days before the actual operation begins, what I would have done is I would have had Sutherland drop a month before Operation Eagle was actually to begin. And I'd have Michael Caine and his paratroopers, in the meantime, running about and training and getting ready for this operation. And this would have also given Donald Sutherland's character, I think he was like a marsh cleaner or something, because this was located by a swamp. This town is located by a swamp. A beautiful town, by the way. Beautiful locations. And this would have established him as a character in the town. It would have built trust with him more, with the town's people. And it would have given much more time for Sutherland and Molly to actually form a sort of relationship. That's the key thing. They just suddenly, boom, they're in a relationship in a blink of an eye. I would have given them much more time to actually form this relationship. But that, again, is my only complaint of the film. And the fact that these two characters give unbelievably good performances, and they do have chemistry together. They really do. The scenes where Donald Sutherland follows her on the horse, and then they're down by the beach, which is covered in barbed wire, a nice little touch to remind you that this is wartime. Little things like that are very good. The production design is really good. And lines like, for example, Donald Sutherland's character rides a motorcycle, and they're like, you can only have 3 gallons of gas a month because of rationing. Little things like this just keep reminding you that even though this is a very peaceful village, there's still a major war going on. And I really like that. And props to the writing for that. But the scene where Donald Sutherland and Molly are down by the beach and they're holding each other and they're kissing and everything like that, they've got chemistry. They really do. They look good together. They're both witty. They're both smart, though Donald Sutherland is smart because of his experience. Molly is smart just because of what she just because that's who she kind of is. They're different kind of smarts, but they complement each other very well. That's good, and their performances are great, but I just needed more time to really establish the fact that they actually have a relationship before, Donald Sutherland ends up writing her a love letter. Now let's go on to the big hurrah, Michael Caine. Michael Caine in this film, many critics say that he was extremely miscasted for this movie. I could not disagree more. Michael Caine is perfect for the role of Colonel Oberst Steiner. And the reason why I think he's so good in this role is because Michael Caine threw his all into the role. Michael Caine always wanted to play kind of a strong character. And he describes Steiner as a hard Nazi officer. And so he spoke very precisely. And he spoke, instead of with elegance, he just spoke plainly and bluntly, which I think works with Steiner's character perfectly. And Michael Caine described it before that, and I actually kind of agree, that normally he plays these kind of sympathetic characters. These kind of characters that pull great performances and, do stand alone, but they're more soft-hearted than, someone like Steiner in this movie. And so Michael Caine put his all into the performances, which is, thank God for that, because John Sturges did not help this film at all. In fact, John Sturges did nothing, and Tom Mankiewicz can attest to this, did nothing but hurt this movie. It should have been directed by somebody else, period. But thank God Michael Caine threw so much effort into his character's role, because he gives such a good performance. And that's just a testament to Michael Caine. But one of the reasons why I love Steiner so much is because Steiner is a total fucking badass. He is. Just the way how he moves very precisely. The way how he gives orders. He's very good at thinking on the fly. And he's a clear leader, and with charisma and true loyalty of his men. His men are absolutely, utterly loyal to him. There's like 16 of his men in total. And this is really brought forward in the scene with the Jewish girl, when he saves the Jewish girl. What happens is they're being transported to go speak to somebody. I don't know when this takes place. I'm not even sure if this scene is a flashback or not, but it would have been very good if it was. It doesn't really matter. The same essence still is carried over. But what happens is there is this girl who's being transported onto a train, who's what is going to happen. She's going to go to a gas chamber. And she runs away. And before she gets shot, she runs into Michael Caine. And Michael Caine throws her on a train that's passing by, a transport train, and then he goes, "Good luck." And even asks her name. And then, as the train goes away, she stands up, which is her fatal mistake, and she is shot by a sniper. And then Michael Caine just loses his shit and actually pulls guns out on the Gestapo men that are running the scene. And beautifully shot, by the way, beautifully edited, wonderfully done. And what's happening is that when the Gestapo pulled the guns out on Steiner, Steiner's men pulled their guns out on them. And it's a very tense situation, which, to be honest, Sturges was known for actually being able to do that, creating very tension-filled moments. My favorite example of that is in Ice Station Zebra, but that's for another video. And Michael Caine says the line, "I have nothing against the Jews." And as a result, him and his men, despite the fact that they are war heroes, despite the fact that they are hailed people who got men out of Leningrad that dropped into play, these men were known as the best paratroopers in Germany. And they were known for being able to pull off these, what were considered impossible missions, which is why Rattle chooses them to do Operation Eagle. But because he saved this Jewish girl, him and his men are exiled. And so him and his men are basically wanting a chance to come back into the action. And when Rattle comes up to them, Michael Caine says, "I will have to ask all my men, and it must be a unanimous vote." And of course they all cheer and yell at the chance to get some action, get into the action again. It's a nice little touch and a little comedic scene as well. It's comedic in a good way, because all of our main characters are there, and it's very good. But anyways, that's why they leaped to the chance to do this impossible mission. They all know that this is probably not going to work and that they're all probably going to die, but they want to get into the action again. So that's a good thing. It gives a good motivation for his characters on why they kind of blindly leap into Operation Eagle. Now, what I like about this is that Steiner's backstory is perfectly explained in the film. Perfectly explained. And what I mean by that is it is explained, not shown. This movie didn't have time to actually show what happened. Which I think in the book it actually kind of shows what happens. But Michael Caine manages to show in his performances his experiences by the way how he walks and talks to his men, and the way how his men act towards him. And an example of this is when Operation Eagle goes sour, when they get discovered, when everything starts, when the actual operation itself, because it starts off so good, but like any good espionage movies, things go wrong. They all think on their feet. An example of this is when he has this... The second in command of these paratroopers is a guy named Hans, which isn't really his name, but that is what Steiner calls him. And his men all volunteer to stay behind in the church, while Steiner, Hans, and Sutherland's character escape to still commence the operation and assassinate Winston Churchill. This is when the operation changes from kidnapping Churchill to flat-out assassination, which is brought up with Roddle. Originally, it was just supposed to be kidnapping, but Roddle doesn't specify which one happens. You can either kill him or you can take him. We prefer if you take him, but if you kill him, that's good too. Which ends up, which that scene where they leave behind to just basically give, Steiner and his men cover, ends with the paratroopers getting utterly slaughtered by the American soldiers sent by the British to protect Churchill. And most of these men knew that this is probably how the operation was going to end, let's face it. And what's interesting about this film, despite the fact that these are Germans, is that Steiner ultimately achieves his goal. He does actually shoot Churchill and kill him, and then Steiner is ultimately killed as well. The only character in this movie that survives, main character that survives, is Sutherland. But this is what brings about the twist of the movie. Despite the fact that Michael Caine was just killed and that he just shot Churchill, that is not Churchill. It is a double. Churchill was really, I believe, he was somewhere in Africa, he was either Africa or the Middle East, with Stalin and Roosevelt. And somebody is messaging me. And so basically all these men had died for nothing. It's a good twist. It's a good gut-punching twist. And that's something that's very interesting about this movie, is that you feel... I hate to say this, but you almost want the Germans to win because you like them so much. And you're like, okay. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about this film. But you find out that who Steiner killed and who these Germans were after the entire time was not actually Churchill, it was a double. Which really happened. Churchill did have doubles. Churchill did have other people play himself. So that way he could be all over the place, and if somebody would assassinate him, it might not actually be him. It's kind of like a failsafe. And as a result, this movie really puts you on the edge of your seat, even though you know that they can't succeed out of a history standpoint, because Winston Churchill wasn't actually killed, you know that they can't succeed. You're still on the edge of your seat, and that makes a good historical thriller, because you know what's going to happen. You know that they can't win because of how history played out when Winston Churchill lived, but you're still on the edge of your seat anyways because of the editing, the music, the acting, the performances, everything. It's tight with the film. Everything is tight with this movie. And it reminds me of, again, Operation Valkyrie. It reminds me of the movie Valkyrie with Tom Cruise. Though this movie was not based on real events, this was entirely fictional, this movie plays it like it's real, and still gives that same effect, where you're on the edge of your seat, even though you know that in the end it's going to fail. And I applaud this movie for being able to do that. And this movie really helps that this movie has a great ensemble cast. Hans plays a badass. He says little but gives a dominant presence. He's often he is basically a reality check for Steiner. During the Jewish girl scene, where he saves the Jewish girl. Hans is the one that actually calms Steiner down and to actually stand down from going out into a huge shootout with these Gestapo people. For example, he says, "For God's sake, sir, calm down." He's that reality check for Steiner, and he's unbelievably loyal to Steiner because he almost refuses, despite the fact that he got his arm practically blown off, refuses to leave Steiner in the end. In fact, Steiner actually has to order him, and because, he's a good soldier, Hans leaves. Then you have Mrs. Gray. Mrs. Gray does a great job. The actress, I don't know her name, but she's such a good cold character that makes a lot of things go through. She is the person that kind of makes Operation Eagle kind of work, and she gives an utterly ice cold performance that I just absolutely adore. The look on her face, her eyes especially, are just so cold, and she's sympathetic towards the Nazis. In fact, she never refers to him as Hitler as Hitler. She always says the Führer. And she's the one that's kind of making sure this operation can go through. She's basically forming the hideout for the German paratroopers, who are dressed up as Polish. And there's a scene where the priest of the town, the Catholic father of the town, confronts her. And he goes, we accepted you of one of us, we made you food, we gave you shelter, we helped you out when your husband died, and here you are completely betraying us. And I love that scene because Mrs. Gray, the girl who plays her, gives an absolutely astonishing performance because it's a mixture of self-doubt and insecurity. You just look at the way how she looks, and she looks so confronted, dead fast, as she's going to stay loyal to the Nazis, but at the same time so conflicted because she has come to like these people in the town. She genuinely has. Then we have Larry Hagman. Larry Hagman plays. He's basically the opposite of the American hero. Instead of coming and riding on a white horse, he kind of causes a bunch of problems for another character to deal with. But he plays this stuck-up American colonel who's basically in charge of the area. And he's a daddy's boy. He clearly bought his rank and everything like that. He was placed here because his father was in a high position, some kind of senator or something like that. Because it's explained in the scene where he was going to be shipped back to the United States. He says, wait until Daddy hears about this. He says that line, and that explains his character in a nutshell. It makes me hate him, but in a good way. And he's very much so the comic relief of this movie, and it was much needed. This movie is very, very, very stick-heavy throughout the entire thing. What I mean by that is that it's very, very dead serious. He is the much-needed comic relief, and he's not over the top either. And he does a very good job there as well. He never goes too over the top with it. And my favorite line that he says is to this character who's going to warn Winston Churchill. He says, "If you're late, if Winston Churchill dies because you're late, England will hang you from Big Ben by your balls." That is one of my favorite lines from the movie, and that is actually Tom Mankiewicz's favorite line in the movie as well. His death scene is amazing, Larry Hagman. His death scene is so goddamn beautiful. Because what happens is he goes into Mrs. Gray's house, because he knows that Mrs. Gray is now sort of in charge of the whole thing. And he shoots up the house, goes in, and he stupidly walks up the stairs. That goes into the sort of ineptness of this colonel. And he goes, "Mrs. Gray," and goes up a grenade like he's going to throw it in. Mrs. Gray just kicks open the door, shoots him right in the head. And blood just starts dripping down his face, and he kind of like swallows, and he falls down the stairs, just like the scene in Psycho where the detective gets stabbed and he falls down the stairs. It's probably kind of a parody of that. Now's the time where I'm actually going to talk about this. The squib effects in this movie are amazing. I love the squibs in this film. Squibs are the little tiny explosive packs of blood that you put on your body that explode to simulate a gunshot. And the squibs in this movie are really amazing. They're really, really nasty, and it genuinely feels like and looks like characters are genuinely being shot. For example, there's a scene where Larry Hagman's men are storming the church, which is where the German paratroopers are hiding out, and a shootout happens. There's this one scene where this guy almost looks like it gets his shoulder blown off, and he just screams in agonizing pain before he dies. You know, this is why I love squibs and I hate CGI. Because squibs, you have something to genuinely react to. But this movie has some really amazing squibs. And let's talk about the father. He's not an actual father. He's a priest. He's a Catholic priest, and he is a father. And what I like about him is that he's so open-hearted and so welcoming, which is much needed for this, because this town is often a place where a lot of people will go from the war and stay on leave because of how peaceful it was, and he's very warm and open-hearted about that. When he finds out and then everything changes when he finds out that these paratroopers are not actually Polish. Steiner's men are not actually Polish, they are Germans. And the thing with him is that there's no real growth with his character like in terms of three-dimensional wise, but you remember him. And what I like about that is when the plan actually fails, what happens is his sister manages to, despite the fact that she gets shot, manages to warn the British that there are these Germans in this town that are going to try to assassinate Winston Churchill. And what happens is he goes up to Steiner and he says, "Your plan failed because of my sister." And then Michael Caine replies that this kind of goes into both the kind of performances. Michael Caine then says, "No, I'm pretty sure my plan failed because one of my soldiers died saving one of those little girls." Because what happened was during a training op, just to kind of give the performance that these guys are Polish, one of them jumps into the water because this little girl falls into this well and she was going to get crushed. But what happened was this Polish man jumped in, or the German jumped in, saved the little girl, kind of shows that these aren't Nazis, they are Germans and they're still humans, and I really like that. Very simple scene. And he is killed. This German was killed, and it's revealed then that he is German, and that's how the townspeople find out that these are not Polish, they are German. However, the best scene with him is the scene where Sutherland returns to the church. Sutherland somehow sneaks into the church, and he insults him one last time, because Sutherland clearly hates this father, clearly hates him. And Sutherland insults him, and then the father just goes apeshit. He screams, "You bastard!" And he grabs a chair and he swings it, and he just goes crazy. And he has to be actually carried out by the Germans in that sequence, and it's very good. Another thing that I really want to talk about here is the music score by Lalo Schifrin. I don't really like this composer. He's done some good work. However, he's mainly known for like Dirty Harry. However, his score here really, really works because of how minimalistic it is. It's excellent. It's kind of funny how my father hates it. My dad absolutely hates this music score. I think it fits this movie and adds a huge level of intensity to the film when there's actually no tension. If the music wasn't there in several scenes, I don't think it would have been as tense as what it was, and I really applaud him. And yet, at the same time, sometimes the lack of music in this movie works as well, because there isn't very much of a score to this film at all. For example, before Larry Hagman storms the church, and his men storm the church, there's a lot of music, building up, and then suddenly it stops as soon as the gunfighting begins. And excellent sound design of this film, too, because all you hear are these really, really, really loud gunshots. And that's all it is. The soundtrack is nothing but the sound of jeeps moving, people getting shot, and the actual sounds of guns. And it's wonderful, and wonderful sound design. This is just an excellent film. I can't praise it enough. This is an excellent film. It's one of my favorite war films ever, period. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderfully paced movie. The only real complaint, again, I have with this movie is that little romance being a little too quick, but the performances were still there, so I'm really conflicted on it. I was originally going to give this movie 3.5 out of 4, but fuck it. I'm actually going to give this movie 4 out of 4. I really genuinely like this movie, and I recommend it as much as possible, and do get that Shout Factory Blu-ray if you can. Like Caine Productions on Facebook for all up-to-date information on what we are doing here. Like my Godzilla saga, which some new videos will be coming up shortly, and some more information will be released on on how close the books are about to get done. Like my new movie, Which Way They Walk, and support independent film. Join us on Geeks for Geeks if you want to have geeky conversations on just about anything, and a place where you can promote yourself and stuff that you like doing and like talking about. You can have great discussions. Follow us on Twitter, Snapchat, follow us on Snapchat, follow us on Tinder, YouTube, Snapchat, Tinder, book weirdos. In the end, this is Adam Noyce of Caine Productions saying, sayonara.